So competitive analysis, it's not something that everybody thinks about, but is really, really important for branding. And the more you think about it, the more unique your brand will become and the more distinctive it will be and the more well known you will be as well. So one way to figure out how you can make a niche for yourself in the field or how you can stand out in the field is to evaluate your competition. I didn't do much of this in the beginning because I tend to prefer to just stay on my own path and not get distracted by what everyone else is doing. It can bring up a lot of doubt because you're comparing and then, you're like, oh, they do this really well and I'll never be as good as them. And all of this stuff will come up, so be prepared for that, but you want to be as objective as you can. So how do you know who your primary competitors are? It's people who are the most comparative to what you do and those who are the most popular in that area. So for us, it's anyone who offers coaching or support to freelance medical writers. Could be a course, could be coaching, could be like a one-on-one thing, could be a group program. And so what you want to do is identify who those people are, who those companies are, and then you want to make a direct comparison between how they're similar and how they're different and kind of write that out and have that be really clear. And then you want to look at their brand in more detail, including their content, the storytelling, the tone of voice that they use, everything that they do, every way in which they show up. And you want to start making that comparison of what is similar, what is different, to really map that out and get a clear picture of what the market is like. Just a tip here, we have to be very specific with who we are marketing to. And one of the ways to do that is to identify your competitors and understand how you're different from them. The more you lean into those differences, the more you will attract the right kinds of people and eliminate the wrong kinds of people. And that is good. You don't want to be trying to attract everybody or speak to everybody because it's not going to work. Actually, a great example of this is I've been working on an article for the European Medical Writers Association magazine. It's about the 12 milestones of success as a freelance medical writer. So it talks about how do you identify your success on like a scale or on like a journey. Not everybody is going to get to every stage because not everybody will be at the top of the hierarchy or what have you. But at least it gives you a way to assess, like, where am I? Do I feel good about where I am? If not, what would be the next stage of evolution and how would I know that I was at that point? And so I had written it from the perspective of like all of the experience that I have in this field and everything that I've experienced and everything that I've seen in students and through all the people I've spoken to. And then when we got the final draft looked at by the editor of the magazine, he said, oh, should we be using the word medcoms here? Because this implies like just a certain subset of medical communications and it doesn't include regulatory writing or people who write for medical devices and stuff like that. For a moment, I was kind of questioning like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be so specific because maybe this does also apply to more people. But then when I started asking around, I talked to some experts in the field. I really thought things through, and it came down to the fact that most people don't feel comfortable with niching. They don't feel comfortable with eliminating certain people so that they can have a strong message to those who need it. And my instinct from the beginning was to be specific because this is for people in the medcoms industry. This is not for regulatory writers. I can't speak to that industry. I can't speak to that experience. I can't say that it does extrapolate. And therefore, I went back to the editor and I said, no, this is for medcoms people. I don't care if like 60% of people are eliminated. That's who it's for. And that's who I want it to be written to. So that, I stepped into my brand and I'm like, this is what makes us different and that's what we're going to do. So another thing you can look at in your competitors is content specifically. So where do you have a different belief or a different approach to what they have? And what does that look like exactly? Because these are the things that will set you apart from your competition. You also want to think about the values that the company has and your own personal values and compare those, because you're never going to have all of the same values, and your values are going to be a really big dictator as to what your content is. A lot of people in the medical writing space will talk about how important it is to have a PhD and all the things you can do with your PhD and how it makes you stand out and all of this stuff. There's a whole like belief around that. There's a value that like education is really important in this field, and that their brand is based around that. We chose to go in the completely opposite direction because I do not have a master's degree. I don't have a PhD. I don't have extensive education aside from my bachelor's of science. And everything that I've learned and accomplished has been through skills that I've developed and networking and the sales and all of that. So our brand leans heavily the other way. You don't need a PhD to be successful as a freelance medical writer. You don't need an advanced degree. You don't need an existing network. You don't need to do all this fancy training. You just need to hone these skills so that you can monetize them. So that's a really big part of our brand. And part of that came to be through recognizing like, oh, other people are talking about something different, so we're going to go the other way. So that's a good example of that. And then focus on conveying specific messages through intentional community.